Welcome to Master Speak English. Subscribe now and take the first step toward mastering English.
Lena was 24 years old and living in a noisy city that never seemed to rest. Every morning, her phone woke her with a buzz, and before her feet even touched the floor, she reached for it. Instagram was always the first thing she opened. That day was no different. As the sun barely peeked through her curtains, she lay in bed and scrolled. A girl she once studied with was now in Bali, posing with a coconut on a white beach. Another had gotten engaged, her hand proudly showing off a diamond ring. A former classmate had become the CEO of a tech startup. Lena's eyes scanned post after post, all screaming success and happiness. She glanced around her own small, cluttered apartment and sighed deeply. Her reality was a narrow kitchen that smelled of yesterday's coffee, a job at a call center where people yelled at her daily, and a sense of loneliness that clung to her even when she was surrounded by people. She whispered to herself, not for the first time, "I hate my life." It wasn't that anything dramatic had happened. It was the repetition, the quiet emptiness of doing the same thing every day without feeling alive. At work, Lena wore a headset and answered angry customer calls for 8 hours straight. Most people were rude. Some hung up without even saying goodbye. Others accused her of things that weren't her fault. She always ended the call the same way. "Thank you for calling. Have a nice day." But her voice was tired, robotic. She hadn't had a nice day in a long time. Her evenings were just as lifeless. Microwave dinners, scrolling on her phone, watching people live their best lives. One night, after another long shift, she received a message from her best friend, Nina. "I got the scholarship. I'm moving to London next month." Lena typed a reply, "That's amazing," but tears welled up in her eyes. She was happy for her friend, but it was a painful reminder of how far behind she felt. Everyone else was moving forward. She was stuck. Then her phone buzzed with another notification, her weekly screen time report. 7 hours and 13 minutes per day, most of it on Instagram. Her chest tightened. She stared at her phone for a long moment. Then, without planning it, she did something bold. She deleted Instagram. The silence that followed felt strange. Her thumb kept moving toward the empty space on her screen out of habit, but there was nothing to open. That night, she lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. It was quiet, almost too quiet, but deep down, something shifted. For the first time in years, she wasn't looking at someone else's life. She was sitting in her own. The next morning, she took the train to work without her phone in her hand. At first, she didn't know what to do, so she looked out the window. She saw a wall painted with a mural she had never noticed. She saw a man feeding pigeons, children chasing bubbles, a couple holding hands and laughing. It was a world she had walked through 1,000 times without really seeing. Days passed. She started carrying a small notebook instead of her phone. She wrote down observations, people she saw, things she felt, questions that came to her mind. The notebook began to fill. She began to write poems, short thoughts, and stories. Something inside her, long asleep, was waking up. Without social media, Lena started to reconnect. She called her grandmother, and they talked for hours. Her grandmother told her about the man she loved at 17, about dancing in the rain barefoot, about heartbreak and healing. Lena laughed more in those conversations than she had in months. She also reconnected with an old friend from high school, Mia. They hadn't spoken in 3 years. They met at a local cafe and spent hours talking. No selfies, no stories, no checking likes. Just connection, real, warm, and healing. One afternoon, Lena walked past a notice board and saw a flyer. Creative Writing Meetup. All levels welcome. She almost kept walking, but something stopped her. That night, she sat in a room with strangers who shared stories, poems, and dreams. When it was her turn, her voice trembled, but she read one of her short pieces. When she finished, the room was quiet, and then someone clapped. Another person said, "That was beautiful." And something inside Lena bloomed. Slowly, things began to change. She still worked at the call center, but she no longer came home feeling completely drained. She had new energy. She cooked real meals and played music in the background. She cleaned her apartment and added little decorations, postcards, candles, a tiny plant named Leo. She started a blog called Offline Thoughts. She wrote about what it felt like to unplug, to stop comparing, to rediscover the world. Her blog didn't go viral, but it reached people. Messages came in. "I feel this too. Thank you for saying what I couldn't. I deleted my account because of your blog. I finally slept well." Lena still had difficult days. Some mornings she still felt lost, but she no longer hated her life. She realized her life had never been the problem, only her focus. She had been chasing someone else's version of success and missing her own beautiful, messy, meaningful journey. One evening, Lena sat by her window, a cup of tea warming her hands, watching the sky change colors. Her phone buzzed. It was Mia. "I've been thinking, want to take a weekend trip with no phones?" Lena smiled. Outside, the city continued to buzz, but inside her heart, everything was quiet, steady, and full. She looked out at the sunset and whispered, "I don't hate my life anymore."